In neighborhoods built to look identical, every holiday brings a brief flicker of individuality. For a week or two, lights shimmer, pumpkins glow, and snowmen take shape before the uniformity of manicured lawns swallows it all again. But this year, one homeowner decided to take Halloween to another level. On a corner lot sat a house with a wide front yard and enough space for creativity. For years, the homeowner's Halloween decorations had been modest: pumpkins on the porch, a few orange lights, and perhaps a scarecrow tucked into the yard. It wasn't until one October, when inspiration collided with opportunity, that the transformation began. It started small, a fog machine humming in the grass, eerie lights casting green shadows on the walls, and a few animatronic figures that shivered and groaned when trick-or-treaters approached. The neighborhood children gasped, half frightened and half thrilled. Parents snapped photos and marveled at the effort. For one night, the corner lot became the heart of the neighborhood, a place that felt alive, or perhaps hauntingly alive. But where children and visitors saw magic, Karen saw menace. She lived across the street in a beige, symmetrical house with trimmed hedges shaped like boxes. For her, conformity was not simply preference, it was law. Anything that strayed beyond the bland expectations of the neighborhood unsettled her, and nothing unsettled her more than the sight of giant skeletons waving in the night fog, or glowing jack-o'-lanterns grinning from every step. The homeowner's display grew bolder. With each passing year, more decorations appeared. A towering Grim Reaper by the mailbox, strings of lights coiled like spiderwebs, and a life-sized witch stirring a cauldron by the garage. Families from outside the neighborhood began to drive in just to see it. Children in costumes screamed and laughed. Cars lined the street for hours. Karen seethed. To her, the once quiet cul-de-sac had turned into a carnival of noise, traffic, and disorder. Her complaints echoed through the neighborhood board meetings. She claimed the display was dangerous, a fire hazard, and an eyesore that cheapened property values. While many neighbors rolled their eyes or ignored her, Karen's persistence was relentless. Letters were sent, warnings were posted, demands for compliance filled the homeowner's mailbox. But instead of shrinking away, the display grew more elaborate. Each complaint seemed to fuel a new addition: motion-activated bats swooping from the porch, glowing red eyes peering from the hedges, and a full graveyard scene complete with fog drifting through tombstones. Local news stations even arrived to film segments about the most haunted house in the neighborhood. By Halloween night, the yard was no longer just a decoration. It was a spectacle. Families drove from miles away. Teenagers filmed TikToks under the glowing skeletons. Parents posed their children for pictures beside the towering Reaper. The house was a stage, and the neighborhood became its unwilling audience. Karen, of course, was furious. She stood on her porch with arms crossed, muttering to anyone who would listen about ordinances and regulations. But amid the laughter and flash photography, her words faded into the background. The more she complained, the more people came to see what the fuss was about. And then, when the season ended, the unexpected decision was made. The homeowner did not take the decorations down. The graveyard stayed. The Reaper loomed. The witch's cauldron bubbled with flickering light. Neighbors assumed it was a delay, perhaps laziness or indecision. But as weeks passed, it became clear this display was not going away. Karen had tried to kill it. Instead, she had sparked something far greater. The first chapter closed with the neighborhood divided, half delighted, half outraged, and the house standing transformed, no longer simply a home, but the beginning of a permanent legend. As autumn faded into winter, the rest of the neighborhood stripped their porches of pumpkins and tucked away their plastic skeletons. Yet the corner lot remained frozen in Halloween. Snow dusted the tombstones, icicles clung to the Reaper's scythe, and the witch glowed eerily against the dark December nights. At first, passers-by laughed at the oddity. Cars slowed to snap photos of skeletons covered in snow hats and spiders dangling with icicles. Then something unexpected happened. People began to come not just for Halloween, but for the spectacle of seeing Halloween clash with Christmas. Photos went viral online. The haunted holiday house became a meme, and suddenly what was once seasonal turned into a year-round attraction. The homeowner leaned into it. Instead of resisting, they expanded. By February, the skeletons wore cupid wings for Valentine's Day. By March, shamrocks sprouted among the gravestones. In April, pastel eggs glowed under the fog machines. Each holiday layered onto the original display, twisting familiar celebrations into darkly comedic spectacles. Visitors flocked to see it. Cars clogged the street even in the dead of winter. Photographers used the eerie set as backdrops. Local news returned, dubbing it the horror house that never sleeps. Karen raged louder than ever. To her, this was a nightmare with no end. She filed endless complaints about traffic, noise, and aesthetics, but each report was met with the same response. No rules were being broken. The property was private, the displays safe, and the visitors respectful. What Karen considered chaos was perfectly legal. Her protests backfired spectacularly. Each angry tirade fueled curiosity. People online mocked her as the angry neighbor who hates fun. Memes circulated of Karen scowling in the background of news clips. She became an unwilling villain in a story much larger than herself. Meanwhile, the homeowner professionalized the attraction. Pathways were laid for visitors, lights were installed for safety, and signs directed guests where to park. Soon, small admission fees were introduced, transforming the once hobby display into a full-fledged business. Local food trucks began to appear on weekends, cashing in on the crowds. Entire families spent evenings exploring the yard, taking photos, and enjoying what had once been a single-night experience. By summer, the attraction had grown into something unstoppable. The house was no longer just a decorated home, it was a destination. Online reviews described it as a hidden gem, a year-round haunted holiday, and a must-see stop for horror lovers. Tour buses even began including it on their routes. Karen's home directly across the street became a stage for her outrage. She sat on her porch scowling at lines of visitors. She called city officials. She tried to organize neighbors, but where once she had allies, now she had none. Most had grown tired of her complaints, while others quietly enjoyed the benefits. Property values had not dropped, and local businesses thrived on the increased traffic. The louder Karen yelled, the more she isolated herself. What she saw as a crusade became a comedy in the eyes of the community. The second chapter ended with the attraction glowing brighter than ever. Strings of lanterns illuminated the yard, crowds wandered happily through its fog-filled pathways, and Karen watched from her porch, powerless and humiliated. By the time a year had passed, the attraction had become legendary. No longer merely a quirky neighborhood oddity, it was a fully established horror-themed venue. Weddings, photo shoots, birthday parties, and community events were hosted on the grounds. Couples exchanged vows under the towering reaper, birthday cakes were cut among tombstones, and families posed for Christmas cards with skeletons dressed as elves. The house had transcended Halloween. It was a business, a landmark, and a cultural phenomenon. The once quiet corner lot now pulsed with life, laughter, and curiosity year-round. Karen, however, was a shadow of her former self. Her complaints, once sharp and frequent, had dwindled into whispers no one listened to. The board ignored her. The city dismissed her. Neighbors rolled their eyes when she ranted. Where she once held influence, now she had none. She had fought the attraction with every ounce of energy, and she had lost. Her home across the street became almost invisible, swallowed in the glow of the horror house opposite. Visitors barely noticed her scowls anymore. Children laughed at the displays, tourists snapped photos, and Karen faded into the background. The story had passed her by. Meanwhile, the homeowner continued to expand. A permanent pavilion was built for events. A ticket booth marked the entrance. Seasonal themes cycled through. Summer brought a carnival of creepy clowns. Autumn expanded into sprawling haunted mazes. Winter hosted eerie Nightmare Before Christmas-style displays. The land thrived, adapting with each season, and the crowds never stopped. The attraction generated revenue not just for its creator, but for the community around it. Restaurants, shops, and hotels benefited from the influx of visitors. The city embraced it as a quirky local treasure. Where Karen saw ruin, others saw prosperity. Years later, the house still stood as the year-round haunted attraction. Children who once trick-or-treated there returned as adults with their own families. It became a tradition, a legacy that outlived every complaint, every letter and every ounce of outrage Karen had poured into stopping it. The story ended not with defeat, but with triumph. What had begun as a simple Halloween display had become a permanent cultural landmark. The angry neighbor who tried to stop it had disappeared into irrelevance, while the house she despised became a beacon of individuality, creativity, and defiance. In the end, Karen's fury had not destroyed the attraction, it had fueled it. Without her outrage, perhaps it would have faded after Halloween, but with her relentless fight, she had made it infamous, unforgettable, and unstoppable. The homeowner had taken one holiday decoration and built an empire of horror, joy, and legend. The tale closed with the house glowing under the night sky, fog drifting across the yard, visitors laughing and marveling, while across the street, silence hung over a porch that no one noticed anymore.